The final chapter just brought back the Yuji we all thought was gone. For the first time in this story, he's smiling. After everything, Yuji finally reunites with Nobara, Panda, and mentions Todo. But this isn't just a happy ending for everyone involved, because Yuji has one last move. A plan so insane that it completely changes the power system of Jujutsu Kaisen forever. Because after Yuji dies, just like Sukuna, he will become a cursed object, ensuring that even centuries after his death, peace on Earth can never be broken again. And once you understand the meaning behind this entire story, you'll never look at JJK the same way again. So stick around as I'll break down every small detail step by step, going balls deep. Yuji collected Panda from Gojo's storehouse to then reunite with Nobara. She's aged gracefully, and at 84 years old, she's still beautiful. This is Gege finishing Nobara's character arc from the original series. Because remember, Nobara's story was about redefining what beauty really means. Growing up in a small rural village, she watched people judge and exile anyone who didn't fit society's expectations, especially her friend Sayori, who was bullied out of town for just being different. That's why Nobara refused to play by those rules. And if you remember the bonus chapter 271.5, Nobara met her mother, who was the personification of a modern day OnlyFans girl who objectified herself to fulfill her own desires, smashing any man she can find. She's basically Bonnie Blue, as beauty meant everything. And she was this superficial trash person. That's why Nobara didn't give a rat's ass about her and let her grandmother beat her ass. I mean, look at Nobara at 84 years old, and then look at her grandma with one eye and shit. So decades later, Gege shows through Nobara's character that yes, you can be a powerful and beautiful woman on your own terms. But now, Yuji needs Nobara's help to save the world, as her role as a sorcerer isn't over. However, let's put that on pause for now. We then see the aliens reach the final conclusion about the Kalyan. Destroying them would be pointless. Yeah, future generations might no longer recognize them as deities, and there's even the risk that one day people could attack them since their souls would no longer resonate with the Kalyan in the same way. But the elders realized something important. Their bond with the Kalyan was never just about hearing divine voices or worshipping them as gods. It was about the way of life that grew around them. So instead of punishing them, they acknowledged that their actions came from love. Love for their people, love for the Kalyan, and the desire to protect both. So they make a different choice. They refuse to strip the Kalyan of dignity by slaughtering them on the ship. Instead, they will care for them as family. And speaking of family, Tsurugi and Yuka meet their mother again. Mifuyu didn't know of Yuka's brain cancer and was ignored in her children's pursuit of greatness to become strong. This entire journey to fulfill their dream was to be like Yuta and Maki, right? But before leaving, Mifuyu does something neither sibling expected. This moment parallels the emotional closure Maki Zeni never received from her own mother. Mifuyu openly tells Yuka and Tsurugi that she's proud she gave birth to them and will always be proud until death. But seeing how they've grown, it reassures her that they'll be alright. Those simple words carry huge weight because they finally release the lingering curse left behind by the tragic story of Maki and Mai, where their mother failed to express love until it was too late. Maki did not get to hear those words once her mom killed Naoya, but Mifuyu, she's basically saying it outright, I love you guys. So now the entire clan is relieved to see the siblings reconcile, and one person probably watching this all unfold told is their father Iori. Back in chapter 17, Tsurugi had been curious about him and asked members of the Gojo clan what kind of man he was since he left to go get some milk and never came back. Now he constantly power scaled, comparing himself to the previous generations of monsters like Gojo, Yuji, and his own parents. And in his eyes, none of the current sorcerers reached special grade. That pressure broke his mind, and before he disappeared from the Jujutsu world, he had a final encounter with Yuji. And when Iori ranted about how this new generation was too weak, Yuji simply told him it doesn't matter. And at the time, Iori couldn't understand what Yuji meant, but now the meaning becomes very clear in the final chapter. Yuji was planning to remove curse energy from humanity entirely, making the whole power scaling mindset irrelevant. Now with that truth revealed, their mother reassures the siblings that they don't need to worry about their father anymore, where the two of them finally have a heart-to-heart and realize the real thing that was dividing them, Yuta's ring of course, well that no longer matters. The harmony ritual consumed it, leaving them with the realization that what was truly precious was the bond that they had with each other all along. This beautifully ties into Yuji. We finally get the reveal, people. The hoodie is off and Yuji just gained 1 bajillion fangirls, if you know what I'm saying. This guy looks like a handsome K-pop model with a low taper fade. Basically what I'm trying to say is,
bro, if I was a girl, legs wide open, bro.
Basically, Yuji watched his friends grow old and die, whilst he aged slowly, and that made him lose sight of what it meant to be human. Yuji explains that his unusual long lifespan comes from consuming the remaining death painting wombs, and those cursed objects altered his body the same way it did his older brother Choso, who lived for over 150 years without aging like a normal person. And just like his brothers, Yuji struggled with his identity. He was caught between being a curse and wanting to live like a human. Similarly, Choso worried about what others would think of him and whether he even had the right to exist amongst people, and Yuji basically inherited that same dilemma. Over time, the weight of being the strongest and the fear of not being accepted made Yuji withdraw from the world. For decades, Yuji believed he shouldn't interfere with the present anymore, because in his mind, he was someone who should have died a long time ago. So after everything he endured and carrying the burden of the entire Jujutsu world, Yuji felt like he was an anomaly, someone who existed beyond his natural lifespan. So he decided the world should move forward without him. Instead of shaping events himself, he wanted to let history unfold naturally, believing it wasn't his place to act. However, in this moment with Nobara, Yuji realizes that thinking was flawed. If he refuses to engage with the present, he loses his connection to both the past and the future. The past is where his purpose was born, his grandfather's final wish, the sacrifices of Nanami, Choso, Gojo, and all the people who died believing that Yuji would carry their will forward. And the future is the world those sacrifices were meant to create, a world without curses where people can live peacefully. However, the present is basically the bridge between the past and future. Without acting now, the past becomes meaningless memories, and the future becomes an empty ideal that never arrives. That's why Yuji realizes that all three must be aligned, and this basically completes his journey. He smiles for the first time, acting like his old self with Nobara after decades. At the start, Yuji only wanted to give people a proper death and to die surrounded by loved ones, but now his goal is even bigger. He wants to make sure that people in the future can truly live, not just survive in a world constantly haunted by curses. And this isn't something he needs to achieve through his own strength alone like he believed. Yuji asks Nobara and Todo to work with him on a 4-step plan to protect the world in the future, because once curse energy stops leaking from humanity, new sorcerers won't be born anymore. And that means if a cursed spirit appears somewhere in the world, there won't be anyone around to deal with it. So Yuji's solution is to not wait for curses to grow into disasters. They should eliminate them the moment they're born. And to achieve that, the first step of his plan is preserving the entire knowledge system of Jujutsu itself. Everything from exorcism techniques to barrier operations, this generation needs to maintain it by learning everything through them. The blueprint for this comes from Master Tengen. For centuries, Tengen's barrier techniques were the invisible backbone of society. The barriers stabilized the entire curse energy ecosystem of the world, suppressing spirits and shaping how sorcerers operated. Tengen was essentially the greatest barrier engineer in history, even surpassing Kenjaku in mastery. So Yuji plans to replicate that system globally this time round, not only Japan. That's when Nobara basically agrees that it can work. But Yuji's second step is to identify bloodlines that are likely to produce people with heavenly restriction. These people will be like superhuman weapons. If they can trace these families and map out their lineages, future generations can be trained, stepping in only when the barrier system fails. And remember what Gojo said back in the original series? Around 80% of sorcerers' innate talent is determined by genetics. That means heavenly restriction isn't completely random. Yuji believes it's possible to predict where those people will appear in the next generation. The third step of the plan is to mass produce cursed tools, and Panda says that will actually be easy if the big three clans cooperate. Cursed tools are basically weapons infused with energy, which means even non-sorcerers can use them to fight spirits. And this is where things start to feel like a new power system, because the world will shift towards technology and tools that anyone can wield. Mass-produced cursed tools would allow ordinary people to defend themselves, even you watching the video. You can create a completely different balance of power centuries into the future. It almost feels like this is a sequel bait for a future era where humans with advanced cursed weapons and guardians basically fight a new threat. And that's when Yuji reveals the final step of the plan. And this one is more insane than you think. In a full circle moment that mirrors the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji says that after he dies, he will become a cursed object just like Sukuna. Yuji believes the systems they're building will keep the world stable for 2 to 3 centuries, but the future is unpredictable. After all, aliens freaking showed up on the planet. Humanity could even face another catastrophic World War III, or something even worse could show up. So Yuji plans to leave behind one final safeguard, and that is himself. After his death, his body will be turned into an object sealed away, and it won't be a curse this time round, but a deterrent, a weapon known as the demon crushing weapon. If a disaster ever appears that humanity can't handle, someone in the future could consume the object and inherit all of Yuji's power, essentially creating an overpowered sorcerer when the world truly needs one. Now, of course, Nobara immediately looks at him and says, "My guy, have you lost your mind?" And she jokingly says, "Bro, I hope there's someone in the future that is as disgusting as you, because swallowing a corpse to save the world isn't exactly normal or hygienic." But at the end of the day, the ending, it's not that bad because it actually completes the story. The series began with Yuji eating Sukuna's finger, a cursed object that represented pure destruction and chaos and evil, and now it ends with Yuji becoming the complete opposite, a cursed object that represents humanity's protection. And remember how Yuji's domain represented the Bodhisattva? Well, that is someone who reaches enlightenment and could leave the cycle of samsara, which is exactly what they did in this finale. But guess what? The Bodhisattva chooses not to completely disappear. Instead, they leave something behind or remain connected to the world to guide and protect future generations, which is exactly what Yuji has done. However, guess what, people? That's the moment where we find out Megumi is not around, bro's dead. And Megumi really went out with the potential man allegation, still undefeated, bruh. Come on, bruh. Reggie once said to this guy, let fate toy with you before you die like a fool and a clown. And that curse finally worked. Potential man's legacy lives on forever. And yeah, guys, the meme came true. Megumi lost to a grade 3 curse and he died.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
But whilst the fandom is busy roasting Megumi from beyond the grave, Gege shows us what the world looks like now. And he does it through baseball. Usami and Jabaloma talk about the massive political shift happening behind the scenes. The higher-ups have officially accepted the situation. Because curses are disappearing, they've agreed to let the aliens remain on Earth. But of course, politics is never simple, right guys? Now for the sake of stability, they've decided to keep it a secret that no new sorcerers will be born. Jabaloma then mentions that they still have some Muru ores left on the ship that could become a valuable bargaining chip. But without curse energy, bro, that shit is useless. So Isami explains the world has an energy problem, which mirrors something that was hinted back in chapter 1. Remember when traffickers and in the original JJK, the US government, they were obsessed with exploiting Gojo. They wanted to turn sorcerers into infinite energy. And people, let's be honest, if history has taught us anything, when a powerful country sees a resource it wants, with the recent events that are going on right now, do I need to say more? Yeah, things can get messy real quick. Usami then points out that propaganda will start spreading soon, and instead of highlighting the benefits of coexistence, certain groups will focus on fear and distrust, framing aliens as a threat rather than partners. Which, again, if we're being honest, this is quite on the nose, Gege. Very familiar to real life, and Gege's doing some commentary here. Play the clip again, editor. But Usami isn't worried, because eventually the truth will come out, and Yuji gave Maru very specific instructions. He told him if anyone pulls up to question anything, tell them that it was Yuji. Blame him. Tell the world Maru was just following orders from the GOAT. And if the higher-ups actually want answers, they can come talk to Yuji directly. His name alone is enough to make people think twice before opposing him. We then move on to the propaganda that Usami was talking about, because a literal conspiracy theory is forming in front of our eyes. Thanks to Ui's crows, Dabura's fight with Mahoraga was broadcasted live. The news claims that 69 years ago it showed Gojo vs Sukuna, Yuji, and the entire raid that went down. That video keeps getting uploaded to YouTube and different platforms, but keeps getting censored and deleted off them. And because they don't know anything about sorcery, they see Mahoraga as the same curse from 2018, and they ponder how it even exists when Gojo supposedly buried it. The newscaster then showcases the whole fight between Dabura and Mahoraga, revealing to the world that he's an alien from Cimmeria, hundreds of millions of light years away. But people, Dabura has the best ending of all time. It keeps getting better and better. Bro is just getting glazed non-stop, because apparently he's an alien of justice trying to save the planet. He fights the demon in humanity's place, so deserves respect, and Earth should greet him on his return. And bro, he literally came back to clap some cheeks, because this is just so funny. Oh my god, I'm actually sick right now, mom. Oh my god. Guys, I'm dying, and I'm still trying to get this review out for you guys. Press the like button, please. Subscribe. Basically, Tomoe and Dabura, they fell in love at first sight, and now she can't stop thinking about him. But then, through the door to Yuka's hilarious shocked face, the horns that clanked on the door occurred again. He indeed came back. And we know it's Dabura because it's the exact same sound effect, and Dabura's goofy ass not knowing how to walk through doors is basically doing the same mistake. So looking at Tomoe's extra volume page all dolled up, we can see why Dabura wanted a piece of that ass, and he was so infatuated to marry her straight up. Remember that Usami called this a plus for coexistence, as political marriages in the past have made two cultures aid each other. But this one looks like it's true love. We then swiftly see Ui and his family watching the news, letting us know that he was the source to the reporter to leak everything. He allowed the kids to watch the entire fight, and now they are the very generation that are gonna learn from that experience. However, the story then uses playing catch with baseball to explain the entire message of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, catch isn't really about the game itself, it's about the communication behind it. You throw the ball, someone receives it, and they throw it back. It's literally conversation made visible to our eyes, right? That's why Usami shifts it into a balls deep idea. When people talk about nations, tribes, or big systems, they forget the individual human beings behind every intricate thing. The story basically reminds us that people don't exist for the nation exists for the people. So yeah, I'm gonna make this comparison real quick. You know that Hokage shit? It's not that if you become Hokage, everyone will acknowledge you. It is the ones who are acknowledged that can become Hokage. Gege is basically saying that countries exist to serve the people, not the other way around. And this makes a lot of sense because so many tragedies happen because individuals were sacrificed for systems. Look at Amai, right? Look at Gojo. And this was usually for Jujutsu higher-ups, clans, or stupid ideology. So the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen with a peaceful game of catch, it's basically symbolic. It represents a world where people finally slow down and value human connection over conflict. So in other words, the answer was simple all along, just try to understand each other. Now, to enjoy more peak fiction about Jujutsu Kaisen, you need to find out how strong Prime Yuji actually was. Can he beat Gojo and Sukuna? We'll learn in this video right now.